This is Mr. Peterson, and I am here to dispel the myths about Shakespeare and to show you that when we read Shakespeare, it's really not that different from the way we usually speak. You've been doing a great job in class understanding, and I want you to know that you can understand even more, and that there's really only four differences between what we speak and what Shakespeare wrote. Okay, we're actually going to start out with a fun little activity. You don't need to take notes on this. I'm going to show you a couple passages. I want you to rate them 1 to 10 on readability. 1 being total nonsense to you, like it's written in another language. 10 being easy to understand, like reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which, if you don't know, is a little kid book. Okay, so I'm going to give you some passages. I want you to rate them on how readable they are, because I want to show you something. So here's the first one. When he was nearly 13, my brother Jem got his arm badly broken at the elbow. When it healed, and Jem's fears of never being able to play football were assuaged, he was seldom self-conscious about his injury. So, what is this? This is from 1960. This is Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's pretty close to what we speak. You know, this isn't too hard for you. I bet you give this like a 9. There might be one word in there, assuage, that you don't know, but that's about it. Here's the second passage. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was an age of wisdom, it was an age of foolishness. It was an epoch of belief, it was an epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, and so forth. Okay, so take a look at this. You know most of these words, but this is kind of a flowery style because Charles Dickens likes to write that way. And so you understand all the words, but it's written in kind of a weird way. So maybe you'd give this like a 6 or 7. So this is Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, and it's about 200 years older than the Harper Lee To Kill a Mockingbird passage. So it's 1860, not 1960. Okay, so maybe you give that a 6 or a 7. That's a little tricky. So that's 1859. Let's back up 200 more years, and we've got this. If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear. Okay, you recognize this. This is Shakespeare. Read this to yourself. It's not too hard, especially now that we've been reading for a while. You might give this the same 6 or 7, maybe like a 7 or 8 that you gave the Charles Dickens. There's a couple words that you don't know there, like maybe you're not familiar with yielding, or what's another word? Well, you know pardon, but you know most of these words. It's a little fancy, but this is our play, and this is 1600 as opposed to 1860, so it's like 260 years older. Now, let's back up another couple hundred years, and we have got this. Wanneer April with the shore sota, the drocht of March hath pierced to the rota, and bothered every vine in which la cour, of which vertu engendered is the floor. One's a fear to take with his sweety breath, and spirit hath in every holden hate the tender cropus, and then on and on. I took a class in college where we read this. Our teacher wanted us to read it in the Middle English. It's Chaucer's Canterbury Tales from 1400. I had a hard time reading this all by myself with this book, so I got a translation and read them both at the same time. So this is 200 years older than Shakespeare, but notice it's a lot harder to read. Like the difference between Chaucer and Shakespeare is 200 years, and the difference between Shakespeare and Harper Lee is 400 years, but the difference is a lot bigger here, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But I really like Chaucer. It's really interesting, and I had to memorize that prologue, and so that's why I know it so well. And you can only understand a few words. You'd really struggle through this without help. Okay, one last passage from the year 1000, and it's this. And if you look closely, you might see 3 words you know. Good, king, God. Well, this is Beowulf from the year 1000. This is true Old English. This is why we don't call Shakespeare Old English, because it's not. This is Old English. This is before the Norman conquest, where the French kings Henry the Conqueror came over to England and brought French language and culture. This, what you're looking at here is almost like Viking language. And you would be hard pressed to understand everything. This is practically a foreign language to you. But notice, from Beowulf in year 1000 until Shakespeare at 1600 is a dramatic change. But Shakespeare at 1600 until 2020, hardly any difference at all. Language changed a lot, and that's because the Gutenberg made the printing press in the year 1500 and made cheap books, and people could read. And once you write language, it tends to stay put. When you speak language, that's why it changes. That's why your slang changes every couple of years, because it's only spoken, it's not written. But when Gutenberg made the printing press in 1500 and people started making cheap books, people started to be able to read, and language changed less. And that's why Shakespeare is only a little different from what we speak. And in this lecture, and you can start taking notes now, I have 4 differences between Shakespeare's language and our language. And if you can get your head around these 4 differences, you'll have a much easier time understanding. Okay, so this is where you should start taking notes. And the first one is the thous. When we talk about Shakespeare, everyone says, oh, thou and thee, and it's not a big deal. Thou just means you. Okay? In our language, we have one word you, and it means a subject when I'm talking to you. It means you when I'm doing something to you. It also means y'all or you guys. It means you can mean you plural. So I can talk to an individual and say you, or a classroom and say you. Well, back in Shakespeare's time, there's a difference. The second person singular, the you, when I talk to just you, is thou. Okay? So look at this chart. This is a good one to write down. Where we say you as the subject, Shakespeare used thou. And when it was plural, lots of people, then that's where he would use ye. When we say you as an object, meaning I give it a present to you, that's where he says thee. And in the plural, lots of people, is you. Your is an adjective, a possessive adjective. In Shakespeare, it's thy. And then when there's lots of people, it's still your. And then yours is a pronoun. For Shakespeare, it would be thine. And when there's lots of people, it's yours. Okay? So give you a second to write that down. Here's another chart. I find this a little less helpful. So wait for the next one. Here's the trick. If you write out a sentence, the you subject, that's where you would use thou. Well, that subject is also where you would use I. So if you have a sentence, if you can plug in I, that's where you use thou. If you can plug in me, that's where you use thee. If you can plug in my, that's where you would use thy. Mine, well, that's where you would use thine. We becomes ye. Us is you. So take a sentence. If you can plug those words in, that lets you know if it's a thee or a thou or a ye or a you. Okay? So that's a nice little chart to write down. I like that one. Okay, part 2. The other big difference is the verbs. So when the subject is a second person singular thou, the verb after it changes. We add an est or an st after the verb. And you'll know which one to use just by how it sounds. Okay, so when you say you are, it's thou art. And in the past tense, thou wast. When you say that you have, it's thou hast. And in the past tense, it's hadst. Okay. All right, part 3. Another change of verbs. When you have a third person singular, like a he, she, it, or a name like Hermia or Theseus, well, the verb after a third person singular always has an S on it, like he reads, she sleeps, it runs. Change that S to a TH, so you get he readeth, she sleepeth, it runneth. Okay? You only do it to one verb. If there's only one action verb, go ahead and change the S to a TH. If you have a helping verb, that's the one that gets changed. Don't you're not going to have a string of 4 words that ends in th. That's what silly people do when they're trying to joke about Shakespeare. It's only one verb. So Hermia crieth, Theseus ruleth. Okay, so that's the third big difference, is verbs after third person singulars. And the fourth big change is there's some common vocabulary that Shakespeare likes to use that we don't use anymore. So this is a great thing. Hit pause and write these notes down. So a maid is a young woman. A knave is a bad guy. We've seen the word knavery a few times. Ere, E-R-E, means before. And can mean if. Fair is beautiful. We've said that a few times. Hark means listen, like hark the herald angels sing. Visage means face, like your appearance. You know, they say the moon saw her silvery visage in the watery glass, or a reflection of her face. Here, there, and where become hither, thither, and whither. And forsooth means truthfully. There's then also some places where Shakespeare uses contractions, mostly so he can squeeze it into the iambic pentameter, the 10 syllables that he writes his poetry in. So instead of it is that takes 2 syllables, he writes tis. And another popular one is o'er. That's a 1-syllable way of saying over. Ne'er is never. Error is ever. And Ian is even. Okay, so take a second and write down that chart. That's a great one to see. You'll see most of those words in our play, and you'll recognize them when you see them. Okay. I said that he used the contractions to squeeze things into his iambic pentameter. Another thing Shakespeare does that makes it a little complicated is he takes a normal sentence and he moves the word order around so that it'll fit into the pattern. So take the sentence, I ate the sandwich. Shakespeare could say the same thing in 5 other different ways. I, the sandwich, ate the sandwich ate I the sandwich I ate, the sandwich ate I. Sorry, that's actually 6 different ways. They all mean the same thing, but it's a way that he can squeeze it into the poetry form, and especially with that rhythm of stressed and unstressed syllables. Okay, here's some examples. Write these on your page. You are a student. She brings you a donut every day. He has your book. You already have yours. Okay, try translating this into Shakespeare's language. You know, the you is going to be a thou. It's a second person subject. And when you have are after it, it's thou art. Okay. She is the third person singular. And so brings is the verb. What do we do to that S? We change it into a th. She bringeth. And now there's a you. That's an object, though. So that just stays as a you. Actually, no. I'm sorry. That becomes a thee, okay? Because it's a singular second person object. And you can abbreviate, you can do a contraction for every. He has your book. Well, he stays the same, but has changes. That S becomes a th. He hath. And then your, that becomes thy. All right, so here are the answers. And in our notes, we always like to write down lots of examples. Thou art a student. She bringeth thee a donut every day. He hath thy book. And thou already hadst thine. Have you had your donut? Yes, thou already hast thine. Okay. Give these a try. Write down the modern English and try to translate it into Shakespeare's Elizabethan English. Remember that your, that's going to be a thy. Yeah. Thy brother wilt give thee a ride thither. There is thither. How are you today? How art thou today? You could even try that on your parents when you got home today. Whither dost thou live? Where do you live? And before is ere. Ere thou eatest, thou shouldst Shouldst wash thy hands. Notice that wash doesn't become washeth because the shouldst already had the change. We're not only going to change one verb in a verb phrase, not multiple ones. Okay? So enjoy reading Shakespeare and understanding it even better than you did before.